Okay folks, my name is Charlie Hale. Welcome to the damning truth on Brazilian football and what really happened at 2014. I will tell you things that people will not tell you because they don't go back to the history of Brazilian football. You have to understand the culture, what has gone on to why this has been the biggest disaster ever in Brazilian football. Okay, 1950 was the last time the World Cup was held in Brazil. Brazil got beat 2-1 in the final. A goalkeeper by the name of Barbosa let a couple of goals in, but one of the goals he let in, people say he could have saved. That guy was persecuted through the history of his life till he died. He was a really good goalkeeper, and he went on to do many things after that final. But the fact was, Brazil never defended as he should have defended. Brazil never attacked as he should have attacked. They could have actually scored 5 or 6 in that game. It really wasn't Barbosa's fault, but he was a scapegoat. But that has always happened in Brazilian history. That went through to 1954, where they were still weeping and crying over 1950. 1958, along came the great Pelé, Edson Arantes de Nascimento. Need we say more? One of the finest World Cup wins ever for Brazil. Same in 62, Garrincha was the star of the show when Pelé was injured. 1966, they got kicked out of it. Having won 2 World Cups on the run, they got kicked out of it here over in the UK. Now the fact was, they didn't take the best team anyway, who may have been able to be a little bit faster not to be kicked out of it, and that is the simple truth of it. 1970, the greatest Brazil team ever. Everybody knows that. Pelé. Oh, absolutely phenomenal. Right through the team, from the front to the back, from the captain Carlos Alberto to Pelé at the front to Jairzinho, the only man ever to score in every round of the World Cup, the great Rivellino, Gerson, Tostão. Absolutely phenomenal. 1974 was a hangover of that team where many had left and they never replaced them. 1978, we need say nothing about 1978. Everybody knows the final should have been Brazil and Holland. Everybody knows why. Everybody knows what happened. Now here's where the story started to get slightly wrong. 1982, you had Falcao playing in that great Brazilian team. Falcao played over in Rome, and that was when we started to get the exodus of Brazilian players into Europe. Now, even though Brazil won a couple of World Cups after this time, they maybe could have won 4 or 5, but they have never dealt with the exodus of players in Europe. Zico has just come out and said something which is correct about stopping Brazilian players from going to Europe. Now that would be great in an ideal world, but that is never ever going to happen. So what you do when they go to Europe, you keep your eye on them, you court them, you follow them, and Brazil have not done this in the history of the football. 1982 was a great team. Serginho, the centre forward, was not very Brazilian-like. He got the blame for what went wrong, but the fact was they never defended right, as Brazil never really do. You know, they're fantastic. We all love to watch them. They're our second favourite team. We love the way they attack, but the fact is there's always defensive frailties. That was one of the greatest teams ever, the 1982 team. 1986, Brazil got beat on penalties. Well, let's be honest, anybody can get beat on penalties. That was a great French team. The game against Brazil and France is one of the greatest teams ever. You go through to the 1990 World Cup. Unfortunately, Romario was injured. It would have made a great partner with Kaká, and I believe they would have won that 90 World Cup. But no excuses there. 94, a great win in America. Romario was up front with Bebeto, young 17-year-old Ronaldo on the bench. Absolutely fantastic. Now, here's where it went wrong from 1998. Mario Zagallo, who is a great coach and a great player. He won the World Cup for Brazil in 58-62. He managed Brazil in 1970 with 3 World Cup winners' medals there. He was part of the 1994 squad. So he's got 4 World Cup winners' medals, and he was actually in a 5th final with Brazil in 1998. Now, this is where the story went wrong. And I believe, even though Brazil won a World Cup after that, the story did go wrong for me, because in 1998, as a lot of the Brazilians were plucked from the nest as teenagers, as they are today, leaving Brazil for foreign shores in Europe, Mario Zagallo had his 2 strikers which were absolutely phenomenal. The real Ronaldo, the one and only Ronaldo, the one that's won everything far more than the new Ronaldo, the real Ronaldo, may I say once again. He was top of the tree. But you had with him Romario, who, you know, Romario's a great striker, but he has ruffled up one of the few feathers in Brazil. Well, the thing about Romario, he did get an injury at the last minute, so he didn't play. So they had Bebeto, who was slightly past it from 94, and they had Edmundo. Now, we don't need to mention on camera the antics that Edmundo has got up to, but to be perfectly honest, they were not the best 2 strikers at the time. There was 3 great strikers at the time that Brazil should have courted and never took, and because these guys played in Europe, Brazil just didn't understand what was going on, because Brazilians love you to be a star like Ronaldo and Neymar back home, then be a big star in Europe. But these guys more or less went straight to Europe to be big stars, and Brazil couldn't understand it. One guy's name was Mario Jardel. Mario Jardel, 166 goals in 169 games for Porto, a phenomenon called Super Mario. He was 3 times Golden Boot winner in Europe, but they took one of them off him on a technicality, and he should have really done the 3 times, but he was twice voted European boot winner, Golden Boot winner. Absolute phenomenon, Mario Jardel. Scolari gave him a bit of a run out in the disaster in the 201 Honduras Confederations Cup game, as everybody had a disaster that game when Brazil got beat. They turned round then, and what did they do? They started to blame Jardel and different players. Well, Mario Jardel is one of the greatest players in the history of football, one of the greatest Brazilian strikers. He, along with Amaruso and Giovanni Albert, were never courted by Brazil because they were European figures. Brazil left them isolated. Amaruso in 1998 was the top scorer in the Serie A. He played for Udinese, he scored 22 goals. He had 1 cap for Brazil and he scored 2 goals, never seen of again. Why? Giovanni Albert voted the best foreign player ever in the Bundesliga, 133 goals, which is a record until lately, till somebody's beat it. The best overseas foreign goal scorer. Absolutely phenomenal, Giovanni Albert. Albert, Jardel and Amaruso, all 3 of those players were not courted by Brazil, and they all went astray. Now this could have led through from them playing in 2 to 3 World Cups. Now in 2006, when Ronaldo was overweight and finished, when Ronaldinho was in his Playboy days, when Adriano was overweight and was in his depressive moods, Brazil had nothing up front. You could have had those 3 players, but you never courted them. Now, this has gone right through to 2014. 2014 is the worst disgrace of a football team I have ever seen picked internationally, who has riches to pick. Brazil have rich pickings all around the world, but guess what? They probably picked out of the 11 first team players, 5 of those should never be seen on an international football field at that level whatsoever. Starting off with the goalkeeper. The goalkeeper's fine. Cesar done a great job. He was under bombardment. He knew his back 4 wasn't brilliant, so maybe he made 1 or 2 mistakes. Wasn't his fault. Starting at right back, Daniel Alves, who is undoubtedly still the best right back in the world, Barcelona in the FIFA World Team of the Year. What happens? Scolari decides he will bring in a Manchester City reject for him by the name of Maicon. Maicon, who was a great fullback, sadly been finished 5 years. He brings Maicon back. Then next to Maicon, he has David Luiz. Then David Luiz, next to him he has Deante and he has Marcelo. Now Deante's not a bad player, but the others are the Three Stooges. Now the Three Stooges together with Deante made the Four Stooges, because Deante joined in with not knowing what he was doing, just like the other back 4. Now his back 4, everybody knows, the Brazilian press knew and everybody knew about football, should have been Alves, Thiago Silva. Then the other 2 players should have been Miranda from Atletico Madrid and Felipe Luiz, who had a fantastic year, and the defensive stats were absolutely brilliant. Now, it's no secret the great Jose Mourinho, who knows a player better than anybody, has actually bought Felipe Luiz, and he's trying to buy Miranda. That should say it all. A flat back 4 of Alves, Silva, Thiago Silva, Miranda and Felipe Luiz. Germany may score 1 goal at the most, maybe 2. You certainly wouldn't score 7. Now, if David Luiz is a centre-back, then there's more chance of seeing a fat woman on Baywatch. No way whatsoever is David Luiz a centre-back. He's an attacking midfield player. Now, in Scolari's team pick, he decided to have Bernard and Oscar in the same team. Now, to me, that's like having Ant and Dec playing. Those guys are not good enough in their position. I live in Warrington, Cheshire. Down the road in Liverpool, we have a great number 10 called Philippe Coutinho. He would have been the perfect number 10. Plays at pace, he's got skill. Like Brendan Rodgers said, he's the brains behind Liverpool. What a phenomenon. Coutinho should have been in there as another player missing with Miranda and Felipe Luiz. Okay, you have Lucas Moura at PSG, one of the most exciting young players in the world. Now, to stick somebody like Fred up front, who's a human scarecrow just stood in a field, and not have somebody who moves on like Lucas Moura is one of the biggest insults of all time. Scolari totally lost the plot. Totally lost the plot. Lucas Moura will be in anybody's team. Alex Ferguson trailed him for 4 years. The guy is an absolute phenomenon. Absolutely fantastic. Okay, now leading the line, you could have had Diego Costa. There's another striker Brazil have never courted, Diego Costa. He went playing for Spain, everybody went mad, but let's be honest, Scolari told him that he wasn't as good as Fred and Joe, so you're going to play for a team on the park if somebody tells you you're not as good as Fred and Joe, because you've never seen me play. I've not played for years, but I'm still as good as Fred and Joe. In fact, everybody in Brazil's as good as Fred and Joe. That was absolutely tragic. Joe had trailed Everton and Manchester City over here. They told him he wasn't good enough. Fred has been injured for 6 months. He was never good enough anyway. The trouble was with this Brazilian team, they had won the Mini World Cup, which is the Confederations Cup, against the Finnish Spain, who Chile proved that. But guys, you know, this was just the wrong choice whatsoever. You know, Barcelona, Real Madrid, they make the consensus of the Spanish team. Borussia Dortmund and Bayern Munich, the consensus of the German team. Now, you know, everybody knows the great colony for Brazilian players is out there in Shakhtar Donetsk in the Ukraine. Absolutely phenomenal. The man who should have led the line is the great Adriano. Adriano is a top striker, left foot, right foot headers. He is fantastic. World-class phenomenon. He should have led the line, either him or Diego Costa. And then if Scolari didn't want that, look at the stats. I'm on about facts here, folks. You only have to go to Germany, Hoffenheim, and who's playing there? Roberto Firmino. Absolutely fantastic. 16 goals so far last year. And his stats are, there's only Messi and Ronaldo made more successful dribbles in the entire world than him. How about that for stats? The man is a great young player. You could have had him. But the fact is, guys, when you look at Donetsk, now this is what I'm talking about. Brazilian coaches, the CBF, they sit there, they get rich, they love the thought of Brazil playing, but nobody goes out to Russia to see the players. I'll prove my point here. Fernandinho came over to Manchester City and he said he needed to play in England to get caps for Brazil because they don't look out in Russia or the Ukraine. Okay? Same thing with William. Didn't really want to know him soon as he come playing for Chelsea. Scolari's old club, Chelsea, seen him, and that's what happened. Now there's so many Brazilians playing in other countries, and Brazil have still not gathered this Europe thing. It is too late, Brazil, to keep all your chickens in the eggs in Brazil. They're out in Europe, they're out everywhere. People are looking, scouting now in Africa, in all over the world to get children between the ages of 12 and whatever. Now Brazilians are leaving Brazil 14, 15 years old. If they stayed great players in Brazil like Ronaldo and Neymar then came over, people would make them stars. But the fact is that doesn't happen. So Brazil, you have to look over here. But you don't do that. That was the most shambolic team pick ever. 5 or 6 different players. Brazil could win that World Cup or be entertainers like 1982 and maybe only get beat by the odd one goal. You know, you look at Marcus Senna. He helped Spain to win the 2008 European Cup. Brazil ignored him for years. A great midfield player, Marcus Senna. How many times will you do this, Brazil? Pepe plays for Portugal. Pepe's a Brazilian centre-back. Pepe was born in Brazil. Brazil have never got hold of him and told him who he is. Many years ago there was a kid called Lionel Messi and he was brought over from Argentina to play in Barcelona as a kid. Now Barcelona have just got a Brazilian kid called Arto Minai. Now that child is about 6 years old, coming on 7 now. Now in many years' time will he be told that he's a Brazilian or will he be told he's a Spaniard? Because Brazil let so many players go. Why do you do this, Brazil? It's about time you realise it's not all about Brazil. It's about Brazilian players staying in Brazil, going out of Brazil, wherever they are. If they're Brazilian born, you have your best pick. Scolari's pick is the most, I can't find words to say on camera. David Luiz and Maicon and Marcelo in one side. That is just asking for 7 goals. This is the same German team who struggled against Algeria but managed to put 7 on that shambolic choice. There's so many players to choose from. Lucas Moura, PSG, Coutinho, Firmino, Douglas De Costa, Diego Costa. I mean, right now, as we speak, Arsenal are trying to get Douglas Costa. Keith Curle went on a spying mission for Sky Sports, and he come back with reports of young players all over the world, and his #1 choice was Douglas Costa, a great left-footed midfield player, plays for Shakhtar Donetsk. Now, there's so many players have been there, you know, Teixeira, Jadson. There's that many players have been there over the last few years that should have graced Brazil. But you class it as Russia, the Ukraine. You class it as a weak league. You don't want to go. You don't want to see what they can do. Brazil, you have missed out on your greatest moment ever through the fact of thinking everything surrounds Brazil. It's time CBF, Scolari and Dunga, the new manager, to change. Change. Look outside. Look where your best players are. Have the guts to play your best players. Forget just looking at star men like Neymar, Thiago Silva, Ronaldo's, Romarios. They will always be there, but you always have a world-class 11. I could speak for another 10 hours and name you 70, 80 players around the world who are far better than the players that you took. Brazil, liven up.